Our next presentation will be sort of a dual presentation. The first part of the presentation will be given by Dr. Corey Hilmas, and he will be speaking about FDA dietary supplement regulations and recent enforcement actions. He will be followed by Dr. Goody, and I will introduce her when her time comes. So Dr. Hilmas.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'd like to think that they saved the best presentations for last. I am Dr. Corey Hilmas, and I must apologize from the outset. I am not a registered dietitian or a nutritionist, but I would like for everyone to think of dietary supplements and dietary ingredients in terms of safety. It's the regulatory actions that we take from warning letters to seizures and injunctions that are about their safety or toxicology, in some cases their identity, so chemistry becomes very important as well. I'm a toxicologist by training and a physician, and hopefully I'll convert some of you along the way to my way of thinking in terms of safety, or at least inspire some of you to become toxicologists. Dietary supplement advertising is everywhere. If you watch any channel on TV, you'll find more products advertised for dietary supplements than you will conventional foods or drugs, especially in the late hours of the evening, and that's a reality in our society today. Dietary supplements are products largely to have been considered unregulated, and the industry has been labeled as sort of the Wild West. We are determined here at FDA to change that perception with the laws currently on the books. Today we'll talk about a few numbers that I want you to remember in my next slide called the bottom line. We'll then take a brief look at regulatory cases over the past year, then talk about the definitions in the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, where dietary supplement was first defined. We will review the requirements for a dietary supplement label, claims made for supplement products, a little bit about GMPs, and finally a little bit about adverse event reporting. Dietary supplements are an almost $30 billion industry, and with manufacturers, suppliers, distributors, bottlers, it is an industry. It is basically industries within an industry. Added to that are the over 400 plus recalls we've had in the past 3 years for just spiked dietary supplement products, and those are just ones we've tested and caught, not all the criminals. About 70% of elderly use dietary supplements daily, and 50 to 60% Americans nationwide, based upon the latest NHANES data. That equates to roughly 150 million Americans who take dietary supplements. On top of that, we have a 25% OAI rate, which is an official action indicated on dietary supplement GMP inspections over the past year, and those are ones where regulatory actions warranted from the results of the inspection. There are 4,000 supplement products estimated at the time of the passage of DSHEA 17 years ago, and today that is over 56,000 products on the market. Despite those numbers, only 40 to 50 new dietary ingredient notifications are submitted annually to the FDA. Before the implementation of GMPs in 2010, we essentially had no dietary supplement firms inspected out of the nearly 1,500 firms out there. Couple that with the fact that headquarters has only 22 folks working to regulate that industry, and given all those factors, dietary supplements are still considered low risk. But I'll leave you thinking about the numbers in that equation and whether you think dietary supplements represent a major public health concern for the unsuspecting consumer who believes them to be healthy alternatives to supplement the diet. These were a couple of interesting headlines pulled from the internet in the days immediately after we published the new dietary ingredients draft guidance in early July of last year. With words like may be regulated. Okay, that's it, yeah. With words like may be regulated and attempts to regulate, it gives you a glimpse of an industry that has been unregulated for some time. It has been said that dietary supplements represent industries within an industry, as I said before, but we're hoping to change that perception and not just put paper around. Dan Fabricant, in just his first year as the director for the Division of Dietary Supplement Programs, is spearheading the charge towards changing that perception that supplements are unregulated. This article was pulled last October and discusses a 31-count felony indictment for a company making sexual enhancement dietary supplements spiked with analogs of the active ingredient in Viagra. Sexual enhancement products like the ones you see in late-night advertising are just one of 3 categories that are constant offenders here for being spiked with active pharmaceutical ingredients. The other 2 categories being weight loss and bodybuilding products. We have recently had the first ever seizure and injunction late last year of a company the size of ATF Made based on CGMP violations. It was the first of its kind. Fed seized some 400 lines of products based on GMP violations, as well as misbranding and other adulteration charges. We recently seized, let's see, that's good. There it is. We recently seized probiotic dietary supplements for making disease claims alone. So it's not just CGMPs that we're sending warning letters out for. In fact, we have 4 major programmatic areas that are our tools for regulatory action compliance and enforcement. GMPs, label and labeling reviews for adulteration and misbranding, monitoring signals and serious adverse event reports submitted to the agency, and finally, new dietary ingredient notification. And here's the last slide. For enforcement, federal marshals recently seized late last year all supplements from Syntec and enjoined the firm based on disease claims and GMP violations. So what can the FDA use in regulating the industry? I will say that not every company is a bad actor. Those are folks who are doing the right thing, those who want to do the right thing, and those who have no regard for the rules. The current good manufacturing practices, the final rule of which came out in 2007, they're the most powerful tool we have to regulate dietary supplements. We inspected the first supplement firm and issued the first warning letter in March of 2010. We also have other post-marketing tools in the form of serious adverse event reports to the FDA, which are mandatory from industry, as well as voluntary ones from consumers through MedWatch and other channels that we have for reporting events. We have label and labeling reviews, which includes reviews of labels on products destined for export through the issuance of certificates of free sale, as well as reviews of structure function claims. The new dietary ingredient notification process is our only pre-market gate or checkpoint for the whole process. Let's talk about reviewing a supplement label first before we get into some of the claims, GMPs, and adverse events. There are essentially 5 basic questions that we ask when evaluating a dietary supplement product. First, is it a conventional food or a dietary supplement? Second, does it contain substances that are legitimate dietary ingredients? And as well, the corollary to that is, are there new dietary ingredients as part of the ingredients for which a notice is required? Third, if it is a dietary supplement, is it correctly labeled with a statement of identity as a dietary supplement or use of an equally descriptive term in place of the word dietary? Fourth, does it have nutrition information in the form of a supplement facts panel? And fifth, are the claims appropriate dietary supplement claims, or are they disease claims that cause the product to be an unapproved drug? So what is a dietary supplement? Our statutory authority comes from the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which I'm sure everyone's now heard multiple times. There are many amendments to that act, and the most important for dietary supplements is DSHEA, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, which defined the term dietary supplement for the first time, as well as defined the types of products that could and could not be supplements and ingredients. According to the Act, a dietary supplement is a product other than tobacco intended to supplement the diet that bears or contains one or more dietary ingredients. To supplement means to augment the diet to promote health and reduce risk of disease. Diet is defined as the usual food or drink of man. We essentially evaluate the intent of the product by representations made for the product through both the label and the labeling, which is the website material or brochures. If it calls itself a beverage or a coffee, a candy, a brownie, these are conventional food terms, and it's kicked out of the dietary supplement box. Dietary ingredients listed in the statute can be a vitamin, mineral, amino acid, herb or botanical, and dietary substances for use by man, as well as extracts, constituents, metabolites, concentrations, or combinations of any dietary ingredient of those listed. Congress never actually opined on the term dietary substance in the Act, which basically says dietary substance for use by man. It does not mean any substance. It is not limited to the U.S. diet, but is limited to human use. I do have an example to illustrate this point, that just because something is eaten by humans doesn't make it a dietary substance, because it is not the usual food or drink of man. On my first week of labor and delivery, I had a patient ask me if I could place the placenta from his wife into a sterile bag so that he could take it home and cook it up for his family. There are groups that do eat human placenta, but just because a small subgroup of humans consume it, these people do eat it, doesn't make that substance a legitimate dietary ingredient. And yes, we've had new dietary ingredient notifications submitted to the FDA that were human placenta. The same goes for pathogenic bacteria. Just because it may be consumed inadvertently as part of eating something else doesn't make it a dietary ingredient. Dietary supplements must also meet other requirements. It must be intended for ingestion. They can be in any form, a pill, a powder, a liquid. They cannot be represented for use in conventional food. Thus, many things that look like regular food, such as bars or drinks, can be supplements as long as they did not represent themselves as conventional foods. For example, they can't use terms in their label like, as I said before, beverage, candy bar, coffee, lemonade, brownies, milk, or cakes. In addition to conventional food terms that kick products out of the supplement box, FDA considers multiple factors for intended use. But many terms are ambiguous, such as tea or bars or drinks, that may be used depending on the totality of the labeling. Finally, they may not contain certain ingredients that are approved drugs or authorized investigational drugs, unless the substances were marketed as food or supplements before they were such approved. And there is no master list of such substances, and so whether this exclusion clause applies is determined on a case-by-case basis. Since the intent of the product must be for ingestion, other alternative routes of delivery are not acceptable. We have seen the gamut of delivery systems from breathable products. In fact, we just had a warning letter for arrow shots. If you've seen that in the news lately on CNN, they call themselves both inhaled and ingested, and the warning letter just came out, I would say, 40 minutes ago, so it's kind of an appropriate topic. But we've seen it everything from sublingual delivery systems by way of strips and sprays all the way to the other end of the alimentary tract as suppositories. So we've just gone through things that would be dietary ingredients. We do allow synthetics for the vitamin ascorbates and esters, but those are grandfathered ingredients. We do not allow it for synthetic copies of a component of a plant in most newly synthesized chemicals. Pathogens, contaminants, and most bacteria also can't be dietary ingredients. However, we have acknowledged some probiotics, which if you can demonstrate a history of safe use in man and safety, then it's possible that it can be a dietary ingredient for probiotic bacteria. Metabolites without evidence of safety are not dietary ingredients. And finally, dietary supplements, again, do not include approved new drugs, antibiotics, or biologics, unless, as I stated before, it was marketed as a supplement or as a food before such approval or authorization. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of the supplement label. I'll try to stick to just essential features that are specific to supplements rather than conventional foods, which I'm sure you've seen over the past 2 days. Supplements are labeled basically as our conventional foods with a few caveats. There are some requirements unique to supplements. They use a supplement facts label or panel and not a nutrition facts panel, because essentially we're concerned with the safety of the other dietary ingredients, the B3 ingredients as you call them, for supplements. They must declare all dietary ingredients in the facts panel. They may include the source of some ingredients in the facts panel, which conventional foods cannot. Finally, there are specific nomenclature requirements for plant ingredients. They must also be identity labeled as a dietary supplement or use an equally descriptive term, as I've said several times. They can contain structure function claims, which we just don't have really much time to get into based on time, unfortunately. 101.3G of the Code of Federal Regs discusses identity labeling of dietary supplements, which is a requirement. The word supplement has to be on the principal display panel, or they can use a descriptive term, like if they're selling calcium tablets, they can call themselves a calcium supplement. It has to be listed parallel to the base of the package in bold type. Simply stating nutritional supplement is not enough to meet the statement of identity reg here in 101.3G. Each facts panel can contain up to 2 sections, if you will, the B2 ingredients and the B3 ingredient sections. So the upper portion lists the ingredients that have recommended daily intakes or daily values. They are the so-called B2 ingredients, named after the section in the reg of 101.36B2. This reg also details the mandatory B2 ingredients are, and they include vitamin A, C, calcium, and iron. One unique feature of supplements is that you're not permitted to list 0 amounts of nutrients in the supplement facts panel for supplements. If vitamins or minerals are not present, then they should not be listed. The voluntary B2 ingredients can be declared if they are present, but they would have to be declared if they are intentionally added or a claim or statement is made about them. One example is if they declare sodium selenite in the other ingredients below the facts panel. If they make that statement, then they're essentially making a claim about the presence of selenium in the product, and therefore it has to be in the B2 ingredient section of the supplement facts panel. The lower section, if present, contains the other dietary ingredients that do not have daily values or recommended daily intakes, the so-called B3 nutrients. These are your botanical ingredients, proprietary blends, etc. These other dietary ingredients or B3 ingredients must be identified, but may be listed in any order, as well as their quantitative amount. If they are botanicals, they must be listed with their common or usual name, as well as the Latin binomial if no standardized common name is listed in the reference Herbs of Commerce. There must be a symbol linked to a footnote saying that there is no DV or recommended daily intake established. It must state the part of the plant also that it comes from if the B3 ingredient is an herb or botanical. Instead of going through the same labeling requirements you've heard for conventional foods, I'll tell you the additional ones unique just to dietary supplements. Iron dietary supplements in solid oral dosage form requires a mandatory warning statement. Liquids, powders, and other conventional looking supplements don't have to use it. It only applies to products with added iron salts. So for example, a liver powder, a plant that contains iron, would not have to use the iron warning statement. A label may bear certain claims about its purported uses or benefits. There's a mandatory disclaimer statement in 403R6 that must be present if certain claims about the purported benefits of the product are made. A dietary supplement must contain a statement of identity, as we've gone over before, as well as contain the common or usual name of the botanicals. And finally, it has to be in accordance with 403Y of the Act, and so therefore supplements have to bear a full domestic address and or telephone number for serious adverse events reports. These are the types of claims we receive for dietary supplement labels and labeling, but only the last 3 are permissible. We don't have time to go into each of these claims as they relate to supplements. But if you come to my ORAU imports course, you can learn everything you've ever wanted to know about claims made for supplements. DSHEA added a section for allowing the use of certain claims. Firms can use these claims if they have substantiation, if they are true, and if they do not claim to treat or prevent a disease, as well as meet other requirements set forth in the Act. It's important to remember one thing: we did not define what an acceptable structure function claim is in the final rule. Rather, we define the term disease, and any claim not a disease claim is likely an acceptable or permissible structure function claim. In determination of whether things are structure function or disease claims, we typically look at both the label and labeling together, and is done on a case-by-case basis. You can determine whether something is a disease claim or structure function claim for the most part by going to the regs in 101.93G of the Code of Federal Regulations. And disease is slightly different than what you or I would at first hand think of as a disease. It casts a wider net than you would normally otherwise think. Current good manufacturing practices. That's the strongest part of the law, and I can't emphasize that enough. The final rule GMPs for supplements were published in 2007 with a 3-year phase-in. We've really stepped up our efforts in both warning letters, seizures, and injunctions in this area over the past year as a direct result of both going into more firms and probably more importantly, building excellent cases from the ground up that are slam dunks for the agency. Consumers should have access to dietary supplements that meet quality standards, that are free from contamination, and are accurately labeled. CGMPs were set in place to ensure the identity, purity, and quality of the material. The first inspections were rolled out in 2008 when we went into about 20 or so firms that year, followed by going into 80 firms the next year. 2010, we hit about 120 firms. We will be able to inspect nearly 15% dietary supplement firms annually in 2012. Also know that GMPs apply to all domestic and foreign firms, but does not apply to raw material manufacturers at this point. Finding the firms who are spiking supplements with APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, is a major challenge for us. FDA is forced usually into a reactive posture and must look for evidence of intentional adulteration by finding and testing products already on store shelves and on the internet. Testing each product requires a significant investment of both time and resources. Magic Power Coffee, remember this very well. This was an instant coffee. Eventually, just because of the use of the word term coffee, it sort of kicks it out of the supplement box, but for illustrating these purposes, we looked at it because they were labeled as a dietary supplement. The label read, for best results, use approximately 30 to 45 minutes prior to engaging in sexual intercourse. So my question to you, does that sound like your regular Monday morning coffee? Sexual enhancement products represent a major health concern for containing spiked ingredients. Weight loss products are the other category. Solo Slim Extra Strength was a product found to contain a hidden sibutramine analog. While the warning stated, contact your healthcare professional before taking any dietary supplement, a physician would not know that this product contains sibutramine metabolite. We find that weight loss products are commonly spiked with a variety of active pharmaceutical ingredients shown here. And finally, we have bodybuilding products. Information about steroid ingredients typically spread in blogs and are often inaccurate. If you read these blog pages, they're written by folks who essentially want to be toxicologists but clearly are used to curling weights for a living. Synthetic steroid ingredients are not only confusing to consumers, but they're not dietary ingredients. Each steroid ingredient can have numerous synonyms, many of which are obscure chemical names, and some may be nicknames given to the compound by the manufacturer. This is a small sample of our notable recalls for both sexual enhancement and weight loss products. It shows what the product was tainted with. FDA is constantly bombarded with reports of tainted supplements. Our first priority is to alert the public and to remove the product from the market. This is not always an easy task to accomplish, and often firms are not immediately receptive to conducting a voluntary recall of their tainted products. Balancing strategic enforcement with consumer protection is always challenging. As we investigate large targets, we often identify multiple products containing hidden ingredients that require immediate risk containment. There's both a mandatory and voluntary reporting of serious adverse events from consumption of supplements. Serious adverse events are currently the only ones mandatory, and serious here is defined as death, life-threatening experience, inpatient stays, persistent disability or incapacity, congenital anomalies or birth defects, or requires medical or surgical intervention to prevent an outcome. Firms must report to FDA serious adverse events within 15 business days and must make and maintain records for 6 years. For non-serious adverse events, there is no requirement to notify the FDA, but the firms must still keep those records. There are also voluntary reports to the FDA by consumers that go to our MedWatch and CARES databases, and someone will be talking about that soon. Here's the take-home message. Consumers should have access to dietary supplements that meet quality standards, that are free from contamination, and that are accurately labeled. To accomplish this public health mission, FDA must protect the public from unsafe supplements and take action on bad firms through enforcement using tools and resources such as GMP inspections and labeling reviews. I'd like to thank my division director, Daniel Fabricant. Without his leadership, we would have no headlines for enforcement action on supplement products and firms over the past year. Well, this is an abbreviated version of my much longer course for ORA University on the same subject. It's important for registered dietitians to be exposed to supplements and understand the unique safety issues encountered with them, which ultimately impacts public health on a very grand scale. If you have any questions.
We're ready to take, we have time to take a few questions. I see there are quite a few questions, and we will take them in the order as they are listed. So, will the regulations create a hostile environment for smaller companies doing the right thing and open the door for major pharmaceutical companies to take over the industry?
No, it's, you know, everyone, there are certain, for small businesses, I mean, there's a small business nutrition labeling exemption that small businesses can apply to, where they don't have to essentially label their product according to 101.36. So there are definitely things in the law keeping small businesses in mind. So we publish labeling guidance for small businesses, but certainly, you know, all firms, small or big, are susceptible to GMP inspections, as well as you know, identity labeling of their products. Good question.
All right, we're moving on, and my skill here is getting the best of me. I want to go back to the second question. What about those companies for dietary supplements that have a USP verified logo? Are they good? Why not require these manufacturers to have USP verified logos?
Yeah, interesting question. You know, USP, that comes in more for GMP inspections. We don't require any USP logos. It's not stated in the regs. Companies have to abide by what's in the Act and in the Code of Federal Regulations. So, you know, we've not opined on USP for any statements such as that, and for labeling of supplements.
All right, this is our very last question before we move to the next speaker. Are these companies required to have some kind of standards in terms of their production plants, QC and QA, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we didn't have time to go into all the documentation that they need for GMP inspections, but essentially that's what's covered for GMPs. So you know, QA and QC analysis of all their ingredients. Absolutely, that's what the inspectors look at. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Hielman.